rolling, limousine right, jet flying, son of a gun.
From the past.
I am a real American.
To the present. And the future.
Chair of wheels, more of lawn. Chair of wheels, more of lawn.
You are listening to Penn State's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Marking Out on Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast. I am your host, Jason Marcus, and we had a very historic night of professional wrestling last night on Monday Night Raw, so we're definitely going to dive right into that. Also, on Sunday, we had Slammiversary 16, Impact Wrestling's one of their biggest shows of the year, so we'll be talking about that as well. And as well as the last couple days of New Japan's G1 Climax. So a lot of professional wrestling that has happened
this past week. So a lot to get into, and we will certainly get into it. So let's start it right now with Monday Night Raw from last night. It's the newest, it's the freshest in our heads, and it was a really big show, really important show as well. It started out with Stephanie, Triple H, and Mr. McMahon all in the ring with the entire roster, the entire Raw roster, out on the entranceway. So Stephanie had been teasing for weeks this big announcement that she was going to be making on this show, so everyone kind of had an idea what she was alluding to, but nothing had been 100% solidified as to what it was going to be. But the big announcement comes that at the end of October, there will be a WWE Network special entitled Evolution, and the show will be entirely made up of all female wrestlers. Not a single male wrestler will be performing on the show. It'll be an entire female event, and of course it is the first of any kind in the WWE or any other promotion to have an all-female event. So big news to start off Monday Night Raw. I like this because I think it's a great step in the women's revolution. I think the women wrestlers are more than deserving of this spot. Obviously, there's so much great talent there that are being underutilized, and hopefully this will be a platform for creative to kind of play around with some of the more characters that they don't get to use on a regular basis, try to build stories for them and give their career a boost moving forward. So I'm excited for this new Evolution pay-per-view. I'm a little not a huge fan of the name, just because obviously Evolution is Triple H's faction. It almost feels a little too like how should I say this? It almost feels like Triple H was just subtly trying to say, I'm still a part of this, like almost taking credit for it by naming the show the name of his most successful, one of his most successful factions. Otherwise, I'm just kind of being picky about it. Glad that it's here. Excited for Evolution in October. The only thing I really didn't like about this whole segment to open the show was it almost felt like the WWE and the McMahons were taking more credit on themselves. It was like a big proverbial pat on the back, and they would do it throughout the entire night in segments that really didn't need it. They were just like, oh, and remember, there's this new pay-per-view, which is awesome, but they almost felt like they were trying to give themselves a pat on the back, I guess I should say. So I wasn't a huge fan of the delivery of it. It felt like it was very over the top, very cheesy, which is WWE, I guess. But I just felt like the entire time I was waiting for the proverbial other shoe to drop. Felt like there was going to be some sort of swerve here where Triple H was going to go back into his big heel mode, and he was giving this big, long speech about how great the women are and how long they've had to put up with 30-second matches and hashtag give divas a chance and yada, yada, yada. And then I was just waiting for him to say, but, and do some sort of heel stuff. But it never happened. It never came. The announcement went off without a hitch. So like I said, it was a great moment for female wrestlers everywhere. A great moment for the WWE. I just wish it was done a little bit differently, and it wasn't so much about the McMahons, and it wasn't so cheesy and over the top. But that is how Raw kicked off its 3-hour show. We had a lot of things happening on this episode of Raw to help build toward SummerSlam. We are firmly on the road to the biggest party of the summer. So right after we had that right after we had that opening promo, we had a match for the Raw Tag Team Championship. It was the champions, the B team of Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, defending their titles in a rematch from Extreme Rules against the Leaders of Worlds, Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy. I thought this was, again, about the same quality as their matchup that they had at Extreme Rules. It was okay, wasn't great, wasn't horrible. Very middle of the road, average, predictable match. The finish comes where Wyatt is thrown into Matt Hardy, and that causes Curtis Axel to roll up Matt Hardy in some sort of crucifix pin roll up to get a surprise 1, 2, 3. So it looked like the Leaders of Worlds were dominating the matchup, and then the B team picks up the win out of nowhere to retain their titles. Afterwards, Wyatt and Hardy beat down Axel and Dallas. They hit their finishers on each of them respectively. So that program looks to be continuing. I'd imagine that match is going to happen again at SummerSlam for the Raw Tag Team titles, which I'm not too upset about. I am a fan of the B team. I know a lot of people are a fan of Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt. So you get a lot of good things from that, but I'd imagine that their match at SummerSlam, if it does happen, will probably be the last in their series of matches, and then the B team can move on to some other things as well as the Leaders of Worlds. But they pick up a big win on Monday Night Raw to retain their titles, so B team are looking strong at the moment. After that, throughout the day, we were getting a bunch of segments where Elias would be teasing to play some new songs from his album that has just released. Yes, Elias, the person, has actually released an album under the WWE character of Elias. It's on iTunes. It's on pretty much all those streaming services. You can check it out. But throughout the show, he's threatening to play some of his new music from there, and every time he gets ready to play something, he gets interrupted. So we had that segment where Elias tries to play his music, interrupted by the Authors of Pain, who come out, and they kind of set up an open challenge to anybody in the back, and it is answered by Titus Worldwide, the team of Titus O'Neil and Apollo Crews and Dana Brooke on the outside. And it was kind of a weird segment. There's not really a match here between the two of them, even though they were calling out an open challenge. It was more of just a back and forth verbally. And actually, Titus Worldwide picks up, kind of punks out the Authors of Pain a little bit. They make Authors of Pain leave the room. So setting up for a future program, probably for a match next week on Raw. But not a strong look for the Authors of Pain here to just come out, call someone out, and then get punked out and leave. I didn't like that at all. And it doesn't really help Titus Worldwide or Apollo Crews at all because they didn't win anything. They just kind of said words and the AOP decided not to do anything. So wasn't a huge fan of that segment. We also had a match between Mojo Rawley and Tyler Breeze. And Mojo Rawley wins again with that sit-out Alabama Slam. And I'm growing more fond of Mojo Rawley. I really like his character far more now than I did when he was babyface with Zack Ryder. He was so annoying then. And he's kind of more of a savage, brutal wrestler now, which I really like. Tyler Breeze, poor Tyler Breeze. Obviously, his partner Fandango's on the shelf, so they're doing even less with him now than they did when they were healthy. But he gets jobbed out to Mojo Rawley for the second week in a row. But it's important to note that Bobby Roode is on commentary for this matchup. And that's important to note because I think last week I predicted that Mojo Rawley would be heading into a feud with Bobby Roode for SummerSlam. And if that is indeed the direction that they are going with this, then poor Bobby Roode, as I said last week, because he deserves so much more than a program with Mojo Rawley. It's great for Mojo because Bobby Roode is a much bigger name than he is. But I feel like if that's the position that you're in, you could be doing so much better. But that is setting up that program as well. What else did we have on Raw? We had a segment with Kevin Owens and Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman comes out, cuts a promo. Kevin Owens comes out, and they're having a verbal smackdown, if you will, from the ramp. And Owens basically says, you crushed my son's dreams. He wanted us to team together. Kevin Owens' son wanted him to replace Nicholas and they be the tag champs. But that's not going to happen. And this leads to a backstage segment where Kevin Owens wants a match with Braun Strowman at SummerSlam. And if Kevin Owens wins, he will also win Braun's Money in the Bank briefcase. Originally, the idea is nixed by Kurt Angle, but Stephanie McMahon likes the idea and makes it official, so those two will fight at SummerSlam. And if Kevin Owens were to win, or more importantly, if Braun Strowman were to lose in any way, meaning disqualification, count out, whatever you call it, he will lose the briefcase to Kevin Owens. So we get another match confirmed for SummerSlam. I'm excited about it. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and continue talking about Raw. But you are listening to Marking Out, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast here on Com Radio.
Now back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Marking Out on Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast. I am your host, Jason Marcus, and we're talking about last night's edition of Monday Night Raw, a historic Monday Night Raw. They announced the first ever women's-only pay-per-view, Evolution, that will take place at the end of October. We also got our number one contender for Brock Lesnar's WWE Universal Championship at SummerSlam, which we'll talk about later in the show. Right now, we are talking about the segment between Braun Strowman and Kevin Owens. Obviously, Kevin Owens and Strowman will now go one-on-one at SummerSlam, and if Kevin Owens were to win, or if Braun Strowman were to lose for any reason, then Braun Strowman would lose his briefcase to Kevin Owens. So big stakes there. It's also important to note during this segment there, for some reason, was Jinder Mahal involved. I don't know. But Jinder Mahal comes out, and I guess he gets beat up by Braun Strowman. But I guess Jinder Mahal's got a new character change. He is Tranquilo, which is by no means ripping off New Japan with their whole faction based on Tranquilo. But nonetheless, Jinder Mahal is trying to be the peace, trying to, he's supporting peace and tranquility and being calm and whatever, and he gets beat up for it. So be a star. So that was that segment. Also, we had a big match between Finn Balor and Drew McIntyre. I was actually kind of excited for this matchup because we haven't seen these two wrestle each other quite a lot. So I was excited to see it. It was an okay match. The finish of the match is Finn Balor looks like he's going to hit the coup de grace on McIntyre and get the win. Ziggler attacks him, knocks him off the top rope. That's a DQ. McIntyre and Ziggler are now beating up Finn after the matchup. And here comes Seth Rollins to make the save. And of course, we are now getting an impromptu tag team match. One side is Ziggler and McIntyre. On the other side is Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. So four of the best workers in the entire company in one matchup. And it is exactly as what you would expect. It's a very good match between all four of them. Very high-paced. They all hit their finishers in high spots. The finish of the match comes when Seth Rollins hits the curb stomp on Dolph Ziggler, so him and Balor do pick up the win here. And there's another match made official for SummerSlam that Dolph Ziggler will once again defend the Intercontinental Championship against Seth Rollins, this time at SummerSlam, in which what you would imagine would be the finish of their series as well before Rollins and Ziggler move on to bigger and better things. Hoping Rollins can get a world title push in there. But he gets a win in a big tag team match here on Raw. Some other things that happened on the show. We had Mickie James defeat Natalya with the help of Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss distracts Natalya, which allows her to turn around, get hit with a Mick kick. Mickie James picks up a rare win on Monday Night Raw these days. So good for Mickie James. That, of course, is building towards the program between Alexa Bliss and Natalya's quote-unquote best friend, Ronda Rousey, at SummerSlam as well. So continuing to build that angle. We also had Ember Moon defeat Liv Morgan in just a regular 5-minute match. Hits the Eclipse, picks up a win there. So after losing to Sarah Logan last week, Ember Moon comes back with a big win here on Raw. And that leads us to our main event of the evening, and it is, of course, a rematch from Extreme Rules between Bobby Lashley and the big dog, Roman Reigns, where the winner will face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Universal Championship at SummerSlam. So, big stakes on the line, of course. At Extreme Rules, these two fought off, and Bobby Lashley got the win. But the question is, would he be able to do it for 2 times in a row? And, of course, the answer is no. No, he cannot. Roman Reigns, the big dog, the company guy, wins again. He defeats Bobby Lashley here, and Roman Reigns will face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Universal Championship at SummerSlam in a match that absolutely nobody wants to see again. But that's the WWE right now. They really just want Roman to be cheered in any way possible. They are doing all they can to make Brock look like to be a huge a-hole and a big heel in the company, and it's just not going to work if they're expecting anything less than the exact same reaction that they got at WrestleMania, the exact same reaction that they got at the Greatest Royal Rumble. They are sorely mistaken themselves. So Reigns-Lesnar 3 will take place in Brooklyn at SummerSlam, and I hope that Roman wins the title for the sole purpose of we can move on from this. I think everyone is kind of sick of the games, myself included. So, Roman picks up the win over Bobby Lashley. It is a good match. I don't want to take any credit away from Bobby Lashley or Roman Reigns. They are both good workers. I'm just so tired of Reigns always being the guy in the spotlight. And, of course, Reigns-Lesnar, I think, is run stale. And I think I'm ready for some new programs. But, nonetheless, that was Monday Night Raw. It does a lot more to build towards SummerSlam. We have our main event now, which is nice, but that's pretty much it from Monday Night Raw. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Slammiversary 16 as well as the New Japan G1 Climax. So you are listening to Marking Out on Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast, and we will be right back.
Now, back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Go back even farther, and we are now going to talk about Sunday's pay-per-view from Impact Wrestling, Slammiversary 16. Of course, we all know Impact Wrestling is not in the best spot that has ever been in company history. But they are definitely on the upswing after new management has taken over. Don Callis, who has a big hand in New Japan Pro Wrestling, is kind of the guy in Impact now. So you're going to see a lot more crossover promotions, I would believe, and you're going to see a lot of the New Japan style kind of make its way towards Impact Wrestling. And I think you saw a lot of that happen here at Slammiversary. So we will waste no more time, and we will talk about Slammiversary 16, which overall a lot of people think it was one of the best pay-per-views in the company history, and I'd have to agree with them. It was by no means must-see wrestling, but compared to some of the product that they've been putting out over the past couple years, it is certainly a massive upgrade. So let's just go right into it. There were 2 matches, more or less, on a kickoff show. The first one was it was a Knockouts division match between Allie and Tessa Blanchard. Tessa Blanchard, of course, the daughter of Hall of Famer Tully Blanchard, one of the 4 horsemen, so wrestling is in her blood. She is the face, or more likely the woman that will most likely be pushed to the top of the division when it's all said and done at the end of this year. But Tessa Blanchard picks up a big win over Allie in the pre-show. This is followed by a fatal four-way match between Phoenix, Ishimori, Johnny Impact, who makes his return to Impact Wrestling pay-per-view after being on Survivor that will air this fall, and Petey Williams, who is filling in for the injured Rich Swann. Petey Williams usually just a backstage producer at this point for Impact Wrestling, but obviously the injury to Swann had them change their plans, and so we got a surprise entrant in Petey Williams, whom we haven't seen wrestle in a while. So I was excited to see him in this matchup. Ultimately, it's exactly what you would expect from these four guys. A lot of jumping around, a lot of high spots, very quick pace, a lot of really good athleticism displayed. But in the end, it is Johnny Impact who picks up the win in his return to pay-per-view, and I think this is the right decision here because he's probably the biggest star out of the four of them there. It was his big return, so you want to keep, you don't want to give him a loss in his return right away. So although it was on the pre-show or kickoff show, whatever you want to call it, still a big win here for Johnny Impact, as he will most likely be a key figure into their plans moving forward, especially after a great pay-per-view that we had here. So that was the pre-show. We open up the main card with a match for the X Division Championship. It is the champion Matt Sydal, otherwise known as Evan Bourne to some of our purely WWE fans. Now under the moniker of Matt Sydal, he is the X Division champion in Impact Wrestling, and he's defending their title in the opening match against Brian Cage. Brian Cage, the much larger opponent, basically dwarfs or makes Bourne look so small in comparison, but they do have a really good match for the title here. I think Sydal is one of the most underrated high flyers in the entire industry, but in the end, Brian Cage is able to pick up the win here to win the X Division Championship. It's important to note that this is actually Cage's first championship win in Impact Wrestling, so more big things to come for Brian Cage. We talked about Johnny Impact being a big player for Impact going in the future, and I think Cage will be as well. Obviously, he is their new X Division Championship, so they do have big plans for him, but great match to start off the show. Interested to see if their program continues or if the two move on to some other workers, but they open the show with a title change, which is also always very exciting. Let's see, after that, we had the tag team match between New LAX, Santana, and Ortiz versus the OG LAX, Homicide and Hernandez, in a 5-1-5-0 street fight. This is one of three matches on the card that gets extremely physical, although only one of them is advertised as a hardcore match, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But this is a hard-hitting affair, a lot of weapons involved, ladder spots. There was a really cool spot that LAX did on top of a ladder. It's so hard to describe it. He does like a somersault off of his partner's shoulders onto Hernandez. It's a really good spot, but in the end, Santana and Ortiz, the current LAX, pick up the win over the old guys, Homicide and Hernandez. But at the end of the match, Homicide and Hernandez kind of turn heel a little bit and attack Santana and Ortiz and actually spray paint their championships with the OG logo on it. So although Santana and Ortiz retain the Impact Wrestling Tag Team Championships, the program with the Homicide and Hernandez is looking to be far from over as they continue their program moving forward. After that, we had a match for the Knockout Championship here. It was the champion Su Yung defending her title against Madison Rayne. For those of you unfamiliar with Su Yung, the best way I could describe her is the female version of The Undertaker. Her gimmick is the Undead Bride. She's really good at the character. It is very creepy to watch, I'm not gonna lie. She's an interesting character. The match itself was a little underwhelming, but it's more of like a presentation. It's almost as if we have Su Yung, the character, and the presentation, that's all great, and then you're like, oh, well, guess she's got to have a match and wrestle. And she's the champion, so you shouldn't really be thinking like that from your champion here, but they do have the match. Su Yung does pick up the win over Madison Rayne to retain her Knockout Championship. So, again, interesting to see if that feud continues or if they kind of call it quits there and move on to different things. But Su Yung retains the the Impact Knockout Championship after her finisher, which is the Mandible Claw. So good match there. Afterwards, we had our House of Hardcore match between the ECW legend Tommy Dreamer and one of Impact's best young stars, Eddie Edwards. As much of a physical match as that you would expect from one that is called a House of Hardcore match. Of course, Tommy Dreamer runs a promotion known as House of Hardcore. I believe that these two faced off in a similar match for his promotion, which I believe Dreamer got the win there. So that was kind of the basis for this feud here now on Impact Wrestling, where they have a rematch at the Slammiversary show. And if Dreamer picked up the win at his promotion, and Eddie Edwards picked up the win here. So Eddie Edwards defeats Tommy Dreamer in a House of Hardcore match. After the match, it looked as if we got this really nice visual where it looked like Edwards was going to continue to beat on Dreamer with a kendo stick, but instead he decides to just kind of like sit cross-legged in the middle of the ring with the kendo stick in his mouth. So kind of like a symbolism of respect here, like the match is over, I'm not going to do anything more to you, but yeah, it was an okay match, nothing too exciting. If you like really physical matches, this is definitely one of them you should watch. Otherwise, Dreamers, obviously, we know what he brings to the table. Eddie Edwards looks like to be one of those stars that I think in a couple years he's going to be one of the guys that's brought up to NXT. I could definitely see him going in that direction. So, good stuff here. Afterwards, we had another match on the card. It was a mask versus hair match between Pentagon Jr. and Sami Callihan. So, Sami Callihan is one of the most deranged wrestlers in the entire industry right now. At least that is his character. Going against Pentagon Jr., who, of course, is from Lucha Underground. Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling have some sort of cross-promotional deal in place which allows both superstars to transfer onto each other's shows. So there is a program here between Pentagon Jr. and Sami Callihan. At the end, it is very brutal to watch. It's almost more brutal than the House of Hardcore match before, but there's one spot where Sami Callihan goes underneath the ring and brings out like railroad spikes, like long nails. And he looks to use them against Pentagon Jr., and he's, like, ripping his mask off and, like, digging these nails into, like, his face, it looks like. And it's just really uncomfortable to watch. But great heel work there from Sami Callihan. Really makes you just hate the guy. But in the end, Pentagon Jr. does pick up the win. So he is able to keep his mask on. However, Sami Callihan is forced to shave his head, of course, it being a mask versus hair match. So Sami Callihan's now bald in the middle of the ring. Overall, thought it was a very, very physical matchup. I thought it was good, showing from both guys. Obviously, you had the story there, which always makes professional wrestling better when you have some sort of story that you can attach to it. Yeah, it was a good match. I feel like this might be the end of their feud here. I think Sami Callihan is one of the best heels on their roster, so I'd imagine he'll probably be getting moved up into some sort of title picture soon. But yeah, overall, it was a good match. Pentagon Jr., like I said, gets the win here. And then that just leaves us with one more match on this card, and it is the main event of Slammiversary 16. It is the champion, Austin Aries, defending the title against the challenger, Moose. And I think this is one of the best. It's easily the best pure wrestling match on the entire card, as it should be if it is the main event. And overall, I think it was one of the better championship matches in the history of the company, honestly. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed this matchup. There are two different styles. You have Austin Aries, who is like the sly, sneaky, fast heel. who will do anything to win, even if that means cheating. And then you have Moose, who's the intimidating bodybuilder-looking guy who's, he brings the strength. He just brings pure aggression. If you get caught, he's just going to manhandle you. So the conflict of styles plus the good storytelling, and these two guys are just great in-ring workers in their own right, led this to be a great match for Impact Wrestling. I thought it was a really good job to kind of bring Impact Wrestling to more relevance because it has been struggling in so many years. So a good match by both guys. In the end, Austin Aries hits the brainbuster on Moose to pick up the win here. So Austin Aries does retain the Impact Wrestling Heavyweight Championship over Moose, and that concludes Slammiversary. A lot of people said it was a really good show. I'd have to agree with them. So hopefully this means good things for Impact Wrestling in their future. Hopefully they are on the upswing here, and we will keep you updated here on Marking Out with everything that is going on with the world of Impact Wrestling. So that was Slammiversary. We are going to take another quick break, but when we come back, we're going to finish up the show by talking about the last couple days of the G1 Climax tournament in New Japan. So you are listening to Marking Out on Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive talk show, and we will be right back.
Now, back to Com Radio's only WWE talk show, Marking Out with Jason Marcus and Matt Freiler.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Marking Out on Com Radio, Penn State's only professional wrestling exclusive podcast. I am your host, Jason Marcus. Just finished up talking about Slammiversary 16, Impact Wrestling's latest pay-per-view. I thought it was a really good show overall. Some really good matches highlighted by the Impact Wrestling Championship match between Austin Aries and Moose. But now we move forward to some other promotions in the world of professional wrestling. Specifically, we're going to be talking about more of the G1 Climax from New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we last talked about night 4 of their tournament. And since then, we've had about 4 more days. So a lot to cover here. We're going to try and do it as best as we can. So we're going to start off with Night 5, which took place on July 20th. The first match there was between Switchblade Jay White and Michael Elgin. Okay matchup. Cage side seats gave it a 2 out of 5, which is okay, I guess, if you have nothing better to do, but nothing too exciting there. We also have Minoru Suzuki versus Yoshihashi, Evil versus Togi Makabe, and Bad Luck Fale versus Hiroshi Tanahashi, which they gave a 4. Said it's just a simple match, though, so nothing too exciting. And then they actually gave their best match of the night from Night 5 was between Adam Hangman Page and Kazuchika Okada. You would expect nothing less from Okada, given how great of a professional wrestler he is. Hangman Page obviously is one of those members of the Bullet Club, so a great heel there. He gave this a must-watch match. So that was from Night 5. So if you're going to watch anything from Night 5, I probably would make it that match between Kazuchika Okada and Hangman Page. The next night on July 21st, we had some of the B block on Night 6. They cage side seats gave a 5-star to Kota Ibushi and Toru Yano. I'm a huge fan of Kota Ibushi. No matter who he's against, I'll probably take the time and watch his match. I think he's just a great talent. If you guys watched the Cruiserweight Classic on the WWE Network a couple years ago, you saw some of his work. I mentioned he had a great match against Zack Sabre Jr. on the podcast last week. Continues his streak here of great matches on Night 6. Also in Night 6, we had a matchup between Sonata and the aforementioned Zack Sabre Jr., they gave 4 stars to this one. Really a big fan of Zack Sabre Jr. I love his matches. So quite similar to Kota Ibushi. No matter what's going on, if I can, I will try and find time to watch a Zack Sabre Jr. match. He's just that good. And then I think the match of the night from Night 5 is this one between Juice Robinson and Tetsuya Naito. This, again, 2 of the best young stars in New Japan. Naito had that instant classic with Kenny Omega that we shared last week on the podcast, and he keeps his momentum going in a great match against Juice Robinson. Poor Juice, though, has yet to pick up a win in his G1 Climax, but overall, a great professional wrestling match from both of these guys. I think this stole the show on night 6. We also had Kenny Omega, the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, in action against Tama Tonga. This match is lackluster. He is attacked. Kenny Omega is attacked before the bell, and Bullet Club comes in, and the question has just become, can Omega come back from the beating he took before the match? It's really not. They gave it a 1 out of 5. So that should tell you all you need to know about this matchup. Wasn't great. So a rarity from a Kenny Omega match, but really nothing important to talk about there. The last match of night 6 was between Haruki Goto and Tomohiro Ishii, which they gave 4 stars. So again, if you're a big fan of Japanese wrestling, you can watch most of these matches. I believe on Daily Motion Video. It's where I watch most of them. So. But, it's a lot of good stuff going on right now. Night 7, we had the A-Block match on July 22nd. First match was between Michael Elgin and Yoshihashi. We also had a match between Evil and Bad Luck Fale. We had a great match between Switchblade, Jay White, and Minoru Suzuki. They gave this one 5 out of 5, so... They actually said, right, and I'm quoting, "This is really strong and definitely worth your time, folks." So apparently this is really strong and worth your time, folks, according to Cage Side Seats. Watch Switchblade Jay White versus Minoru Suzuki. We also had Hangman Page versus Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kazuchika Okada versus Togi Makabe. Not too many big blockbuster matches. I think a lot of those ones are going to be later in the tournament, but definitely some quality matches that you should go back and watch if you're looking to kill some time here. I think specifically that Juice Robinson Tetsuya Naito match from night 6, I believe, is a really, really strong contender. But yeah, other than that, not much else going on here in the world of professional wrestling. It was a relatively slow weekend. You did have Slammiversary, but other than that, not much else. But we got a lot going on tonight in the next couple days. So tonight we have SmackDown Live. There will be Becky Lynch versus Carmella, where if Becky Lynch can win, she will earn a championship match against her at SummerSlam. So we also have that to look forward to. Also, Paige has said that SmackDown General Manager Paige has said that she will announce AJ Styles' challenger at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. There will also be the beginnings of the tournament for the SmackDown Tag Team title. So a lot of really good stuff on SmackDown to watch tonight. And then after SmackDown as well, we will be getting 205 Live, where we will determine the number 1 contender for Cedric Alexander's Cruiserweight Championship. In the main event, it'll be a fatal 4-way match between Mustafa Ali, Drew Gulak, Hideo Itami, and I believe Buddy Murphy. So those 4 are in contention there. That should be a good main event of 205 Live. And then Wednesday on NXT, we have the very much anticipated matchup between Tommaso Ciampa and Aleister Black for the NXT Championship. So very excited to watch that on Wednesday as well. But a lot of professional wrestling over the course of the next couple days. We, of course, will be back on Thursday morning at noon to recap it all for you. But other than that, I thought it was an okay week of professional wrestling. I think Raw was great. Overall, historic night. But that's going to do it from this episode of Marking Out. Like I said earlier, I will be back on Thursday at noon to recap everything that happens on SmackDown Live, 205 Live, NXT, and more from the G1 Climax tournament. So thank you guys for listening to the show, and we will be back on Thursday. So take care, guys, and bye-bye.